what we do is what we say is like, look, if you were to break your arm and submit that to the community, we know two things about you, right? We know the last 10 times that you were asked, what did you say? Did you say yes, 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 yes to others? Or did you say no, 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 no to others? If you said yes, 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 you've been a good member of the community, right? You've wanted to help your neighbors. And so I want to help you. If you said no, 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 then you're just a taker. You're not a giver. And so our community has shown that they don't really want to fund just takers. They want to fund people who are givers. And so, so far, 100% of the time we've submitted a bill to the community from somebody who's said yes, 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 yes. Those bills have gotten paid.
Andy, I want to thank you for joining me on my show, Eyes of Liberty. You are the CEO for CrowdHealth, CrowdHealth Insurance, and my company that I work for now has always maintained pretty simple outlets for me to get the coverage that I need. But it's not that easy for everyone. And I think that's where you bring your value. So first of all, I kind of just want you to give a introduction to yourself, an introduction to the company as value proposition for people all over the country.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. Well, thanks so much for having me. Really, really appreciate it. So yeah, I mean, let me give you a little bit of background because I think it'll be helpful to set the context. This is my second healthcare company. My first one I sold, and since most of us get health insurance through our companies, I no longer had health insurance. So I did COBRA for a little bit. So people understand COBRA. COBRA is basically your company continues to provide you with health insurance, but you pay the full amount as opposed to what just the employee portion. So typically with health insurance, the employee pays a portion and then the company pays a portion. So with COBRA, you end up taking what the company pays. So I think I was paying something like $1,600 or $1,700 a month or something like that. And I was just like, man, I can't do this anymore. So I thought my only other option was the Affordable Care Act plans. And so I went onto the marketplace and got a plan for me, my wife, and my two girls. And I think it was $1,200 a month, something like that. And so I joke, it worked until I had to use it. My one who was having recurring ear infections, we went to the ear, nose, and throat doctor who said she's got a hole in her eardrum. And I was like, okay, well, we got to get that fixed. And so we went to the only place in town that was in network, got that done, got the bill a few weeks later, and it was $8,000. I was just like, man, holy crap, $8,000 for 15 minutes seems ridiculous to me. But that's the whole point of having health insurance. And little did I know I was going to get something from the health insurance company a few weeks later that said that it was medically unnecessary. And so they weren't going to pay for it. So I went through a couple rounds of appeals, and at the end of the day, they're like, nope, we're not paying for this, even though my daughter had literally a punctured eardrum. And so I ended up having to stroke an $8,000 check to the local hospital. And I was pissed because I thought that, my health insurance is supposed to pay for these things, right? And so I called my health insurance plan. It was like, I quit. If you're not going to pay my bills, I'm not paying your bills. And so my family and I ultimately went uninsured. And so we went through a process of figuring out, like, how do we actually navigate this health system without having health insurance? And I learned a lot through that. We were like that for something like two years, maybe. And ultimately I was like, man, I think I can viably do this without having health insurance. And it's way less expensive than having health insurance. And I bet you that other people would be interested in this too, because, I think in terms of like the most hate, there was actually, I think it was Reuters, I could be wrong, but it was one of these companies that did like a poll, like the most hated industries. And one was government and two was health insurance. I think three was pharma. And so I was like, I bet you there's a lot of other people that are pissed off like me about their health insurance. And so I started CrowdHealth in 2021. So we're going on 4 years now to help people viably navigate this health system without having health insurance. And so we've been going at it for, like I said, almost 4 years. We have 10,000 people in our community who basically have all gotten together and said, hey, if something happens to somebody in my community, in this community, which we call CrowdHealth, then I'll help. And so we've done this for 20,000 bills, and 99.8% of them have gotten fully funded. And so ultimately, we can talk about the mechanics of how this actually works. But what we've done is set up a company where the incentive systems, which I know are very much on the kind of top of mind for Bitcoiners especially. The incentive systems are totally aligned with our members. Health insurance, the incentives are opposite of what the patient's incentives are. And so we figured if we can build a company that the incentives are aligned, that people would be interested in that. And we've accomplished that. So 20,000 bills, everything from like your run of the mill pediatric visits to, we had a guy, shoot himself accidentally. And it's actually a really kind of interesting story, but
I want to hear it.
And those bills are going to be, probably $1 million all in. So anyway, this I'll tell the story real quick. This guy was in Montana, and he was fishing, and he was in bear country, wolf country. So he had a 44 in his holster. He catches a fish. He leans down. The gun falls out of his holster, hits the hammer just right.
Dang.
It was a 44, and so bullet went into his calf, out the back of his calf, into his thigh, out the top of his thigh, into his chest, and then out the back. So one bullet, 6
It just
holes,
kept going. That's a 44. Yep.
Had to get a helicopter out there to medevac him out because the closest hospital was like 2 hours away. Was in a coma for a while, went into sepsis for I think like 3 weeks or something like that. And so huge bill. And the community, rallied around him and got those bills paid. And, that was one of our biggest, but we've had, I think 2 or 3 dozen cancer cases. We've had NICU babies. We've had brain surgeries. We've had heart procedures. We've had all kinds of stuff. And so what I think we've done is we've found a way to truly, viably pay these really large healthcare bills without having health insurance. And so it's been a fun thing to watch grow.
Yeah, no, and so what I want to do, I want to pull up the CrowdHealth website. Let me navigate. I'm getting better at this one right here. So what we have here is, let me see if I can. Is this a good way? That's a good way. So like as you guys are highlighting some of the great stories, kind of similar to the one that you mentioned with the man in Montana with the 44. And when I look at these are massive bills. And of course, the healthcare system that we have in America is, I guess the doctors or the medical industry just gets to write their own, basically is a blank check, or it gets to write their own prices for whatever. And it could be, they have a monopoly, so they can essentially dictate how much it is. And either you deal with it, or you walk away, with a finger falling off. So my question is, this is essentially crowdsourcing medical bills. It's not insurance in the traditional way. Are you essentially saying that people come together and voluntarily pay bills as they come up? And what's the incentive of someone paying someone else's bill, and how do they know that their own bills, whenever they come up, will actually be taken care of?
Yeah, I mean, I think that again, the incentive system is just so important here, and so I'd love to, if you don't mind, walk really quickly through the incentive system of health insurance companies, because I think that would give some context.
I think I am learning as you're talking. Again, full disclaimer. I brought you on so I can learn something, because that's something that's like I've always been kind of like, I just hope it works out. And like, this is it's important, and we're seeing this, and we're going to talk about some of the current events that have been going on that are outside of health. But yeah, I would love to talk to get your perspective on
Sure.
what's
Yeah.
the incentives that build this industry that we all complain about. Hey, it's Ulric, and real quick, I just want to thank you for watching. At Coinbase, we strive to separate ourselves by making principled content. Your subscription helps the algorithm recognize that our message is important and should be seen by more people. So help our stories get to others, hit the sub button, and don't forget to share, even if just to one person. Let's change the world.
Yeah, and people, they go to healthcare, and I think they look at it, similar to what I think you just said, which is, man, this is so complex. I don't understand it. And so let me start at kind of like, a very simple level, which I think people will understand. That I can kind of go down into the economic theory if you want me to. But like, the issue that we have in healthcare is that you've got buyers of healthcare, which are your health insurance companies, and you have sellers of healthcare, which are your big hospital systems. Okay. So the buyers of healthcare, these are the ones that ultimately pay for the bills, right? They actually counterintuitively want prices to go up. Okay. So let me walk through how that actually works. There's a law out there that says that health insurance companies can only make 15% profit on your premium. So let's just say that your premium, I'm just going to use round numbers to make it easy, is $1,000 a month. That means health insurance companies can only make $150 of profit. So given these are capitalistic entities, they want to increase their profit. So how do they do that? So for that $150 of profit to go to $165, so increase 10%, your premiums per month actually have to go from $1,000 to $1,100. So the person that you have, your agent in essence, who's supposed to be out there trying to find you the best prices and acting on your behalf, actually want your prices to go up over time. This is not very different. I know that you said you work for the Department of Defense, excuse me, but this is not much different than the military industrial complex, where it's a cost plus system, where if your costs go up, your profit goes up. So just real quick on that, if it costs you $1,000 to build, you can then sell it to the U.S. government for $1,100. I don't know what the cost plus markup is, but let's just say it's a 10% markup, right? And so, do you have an incentive to deliver that airplane for $1 million or $100 million? Clearly, it's $100 million, right? So you have the incentive to see costs go up so that you can make more money. Okay, so that's the buyer of healthcare. Now, the seller of healthcare are these hospital systems. They're selling their services. They're selling their surgeries and their ER services and all those things. They want the price to go up too. So in essence, what you have is a market system, or an anti-market system really, where you have the buyer of healthcare and the seller of healthcare both wanting the price to go up. What happens? You don't have to be, an economics PhD to figure out what happens. The prices go up when you have the buyer and the seller wanting the prices to go up, right? And so that's the real challenge with healthcare, is we have both sides of this equation wanting the prices to go up. And so that's the challenge that we have to figure out. How do we actually create market forces in healthcare? And so that's ultimately kind of the incentive structure of the current system, right? The other kind of real quick piece of that is, even if the health insurance plans wanted to negotiate, they have an oligopoly. Like, there's only like 4 or 5 of them, big ones. And in any one market, 70% of markets throughout the country are dominated by 2 health insurance companies. So there's, an oligopoly that's happening. And so these insurance companies, therefore, work in an oligopolistic way, right? And so if you kind of think about economic theory here, it's a little bit of game theory, where it's like, okay, if I reduce my prices, they're going to reduce their prices, and they're going to go in this escalating, or de-escalating price war. And so what they do is they kind of have this, all right, I'm not going to reduce my prices. I'm actually going to increase my price, which indicates to the other that they can increase their price. And so there's just really no reason for these health insurance companies to reduce prices. So that's on the existing system. Now, in our system, why would somebody voluntarily help another person with their medical bills? Like, especially for someone that's like, let's assume that you broke your arm. Like, it's not like a heart tugger, it's like, oh, I want to help you with your broken arm, right? Like, you can do that with like a baby's in the intensive care unit, or somebody, even has a pregnancy, like, oh yeah, I want to help somebody with that. What we say is like, look, if you were to break your arm and submit that to the community, we know two things about you, right? We know the last 10 times that you were asked, what did you say? Did you say yes, 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 yes to others? Or did you say no, 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 no to others? If you said yes, 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 you've been a good member of the community, right? You've wanted to help your neighbors. And so I want to help you. If you said no, 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 then you're just a taker. You're not a giver. And so our community has shown that they don't really want to fund just takers. They want to fund people who are givers. And so, so far, 100% of the time we submitted a bill to the community from somebody who's said, yes, 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 those bills have gotten paid. If you said no, 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 about 10% of the time, those bills have gotten paid. And so what we've built here is an engine of reciprocity almost that incentivizes people like, hey, be good to your other people in your community. And so that allows you to voluntarily say yes or no. But does give you an incentive because people will see that if you submit bills, how good of a member of the community you've been. And then on the other side of that, we have also a score for your bill. So, did you go to the Mayo Clinic for your flu, right? Which they're going to charge you $20,000, or did you go to urgent care for your flu? Right. So in essence, it's showing like, did you treat my money like it's your money?
Right.
And so we give you those two things when you decide whether or not to give to somebody else. And those have been really great governors for people to be like, okay, I'm going to help other people in my community, and I'm actually going to go and shop for healthcare services, or even better, allow us to do it for you. Because all you have to do is call us and say, hey, I tore my ACL. Do you know of any good orthopedic surgeon? And I know you're in LA. You know any great orthopedic surgeons in LA that will, give me a fair price? And we're like, yeah, we know a great guy. They've done, 3 knees or whatever on our members, and they give a fair price, and they're really, really good. And so we can help you find a really good doctor for some of those kind of bigger needs. So that's the way it works. We're trying to introduce some market forces into healthcare, like, as I explained, are pretty much non-existent.
Absolutely amazing. I mean, you take the dynamic of, first of all, the last piece you mentioned, where you take the reputation of the healthcare provider. I think that's right. Yeah, the healthcare provider,
Yep.
and you're saying, hey, this is a guy has this history of doing good service. He'll take care of your knee. He'll take care of your broken arm. He'll take care of your flu-like symptoms, whatever it may be. Then you have the other thing where you have a record, a ledger of how willing you are to contribute to the collective. And when you turn that away, that history remains with you. And it's like, the question is, are you going to be an active participant in making the system work, or are you a grifter, a moocher? And in a free society, grifters are treated like what grifters should be, essentially, where they are ostracized or potentially outcast.
Exactly.
It's an amazing way to bring voluntarism into society, where we're supposed to be capitalist, but we're drifting ever more so to socialism and communism. And it's a voluntary use case that pretty much could be used anywhere. And so your CrowdHealth is national, is that correct?
Yeah, we're all 50 states.
So do you have like you talk about the resources of assessing the healthcare providers? Are there places where where you have more information, and places where you have more participants, where it's like you have this concentration of information that where, like, let's just say a healthcare provider in Maine, like you may have one person in Maine. Like, where are you most strongly aggregated? Where are you where are the places where you're more loosely populated?
Yeah, I mean, if you walk through the biggest states in the country, that's pretty much where we are.
Mhm.
We have a little bit of heavier weight, given that a decent chunk of our members are Bitcoiners. So if you think about the places where Bitcoiners hang out, there tend to be some density in those areas. I mean, I think the good part is that we have a bunch of partners too that we can go to that say, hey, do you know of anybody in Boise or something, right? And so we've got a bunch of partners that we can use. So if we don't have a lot of people in that community, then we can go to others and say, hey, who do you know in that community that's really, really good? And what we have found is the doctors in those communities know the other really good doctors in those communities and who are the not good doctors in those communities. So we tend to reach out to the doctors and be like, hey, Dr. Smith, do you know a really good orthopedic surgeon in Boise? And they're like, oh yeah, you should call A, B, and C. So we call those doctors and we say, hey, we have a member in Boise who's tore her ACL. What is the price to repair an ACL? And they give us all their prices. And then we go back to the member and we say, hey, we found you 3 doctors in Boise. They were recommended by another doctor. Here's the prices. Go to whoever you'd like. So we can actually, do that work for you. So we're not trying to, put a lot of work on our members. We do most of the work on the background, but it does allow us to do some, again, some shopping for you and introduce some market forces into the equation. The other thing that's really important here is, and really is the driver behind what makes CrowdHealth so much less expensive than health insurance, is that we enable you to pay in cash for those services.
Yeah.
As opposed to having that orthopedic surgeon bill health insurance. So to bill health insurance for an orthopedic surgeon, it takes somewhere between 20 and 40% of their revenue just to do that, just in administrative costs. Whereas for our members, they show up with a credit card and pay it, at the
Direct.
point of care, which is a couple percent, right? You're paying transaction fees. And ultimately what we'd like to do, and we just need some government help with this, which is a, almost, non-existent, but
We'll talk about that.
What we'd like to do is be able to have them pay in Bitcoin, right? Because then the transaction fee is almost nothing. I mean, it's pennies, right? And so if we can rip out those administrative costs, then the doctors can actually provide their services for signicantly less than if they were to have to bill health insurance. There's a recent study that just came out, just real quick, is doctors spend about 15 and a half hours every week dealing with the administrative component of billing. So that's basically like 2 days a week you're just spending on billing stuff, right? Like that's crazy.
And so which the doctors have to also pay administrators to handle that, because it's administration talking to administration and no one's getting healed. Continue.
Exactly. So imagine I'm a business owner, right? And this is the way I kind of think about things. If I build, if I hire a $175,000 software developer, and I tell him, who's just like a kick-ass, right, software developer, and I say, hey, by the way, you have to spend 40% of your time to fight with me to get paid, right? I'm now taking away a huge chunk of their time in which they could go and be developing, right? So in the same way for doctors, why would I, have doctors, spend 40% of their time just to get billed, where they could be doing more surgeries, they could be doing more checkups, they could do more of what they're really, really good at, as opposed to doing this. And so doctors love it because they don't have to do any of that crap. They get paid immediately, and the doctor-patient relationship is reestablished. Because right now with health insurance is, when you go in to see a doctor, that doctor has to do only what the health insurance plan will pay them for. So you have a health insurance plan and the government in between you and your doctor. Whereas if you're paying your doctor directly, it now reestablishes a true doctor-patient relationship. So you guys can do whatever you think is right to, help you with whatever, injury or illness or pregnancy or whatever that you have. And so it's just a way better experience. And the doctors that our members go to love it. They're like, man, this is awesome. Like, send me more people, please.
That is so, I mean, all you're doing is talking about bringing people back to the incentive structure that creates value for people, all participants. And it also highlights how insurance companies, they're not as much creating value for, they're not intermediaries that are connecting people. They're essentially using government to carve out this monopoly where they can usurp, where they can grift, where they can steal from honest participants as much as possible before they either get sued, before they go out of business, or even before, someone gets, fatally attacked like we had with the
Yeah,
UHC thing and whatever that may be. And we'll try,
horrendous.
I want to talk about that probably at the end, but every time you speak, a new question pops up. So I'm going to have to go back. And you talked about how people are using the money received from CrowdHealth, I guess the quality of how they're using their money. Are they treating the money received like their own? So are they going to, like you said, the Mayo Clinic for the sniffles? How do you judge that? Is there some sort of algorithm that goes into people using the money received in an austere, in a frugal, in a sincere way? How do you judge that? Because I feel like that algorithm is important to are their personality, their social credit score, if you will, is purported or is portrayed in CrowdHealth. What goes into that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the term social credit score
I
because
know, I
there's
know.
a,
It
there's a
sounded
lot of
like,
like negative
yeah,
background on that.
of
But I
course,
think
right.
it's just like, look, um, are you a good member of the community? Are you a good neighbor? And I think, we're looking at is saying, like, are you paying a fair price for the procedure that you went and got, right? And so we've got lots of data to say,
Okay.
there's 10 orthopedic surgeons in, I live in Austin, Texas. And their ACL repair goes from like 12,000 to 25,000. And so if we think that, so we're going to set the fair market price of what that is, which is basically an average of those, and say, okay, did you pay significantly above the fair market price, or did you not pay the fair market price? Or in
Mhm.
essence, we gave you three options. Did you pick the $25,000 option, or did you pick the $12,000 option? And I think that when I ask for funds from the community, I think that's a reasonable thing for me. If I'm going to give you money, which is a peer-to-peer transaction, I'm giving you money directly. We can talk about the mechanics of that. But like, if I'm going to give you money, like, I want you to have some sense of whether or not you're treating my money smart, you know? And so that's the way that we do it, is we basically go get an average of what these things cost in that community. And we've got a bunch of data on that so that people know what the average cost. I mean, I think, look, the problem with healthcare is people don't have a clue what things cost.
Yeah.
And so all we're trying to do is provide them with information, some transparency on what these things cost. And if they want to go and get the most expensive, doc, which oftentimes, most of the times actually is not the best doc. That's another thing we can talk about if you want. But most of the time, the best docs out there are the least expensive docs. Crazy enough. I mean, if you think about it, like, if I'm trying to build a widget, right, and I build 100 widgets today, as opposed to one widget today, the guy who builds the 100 widgets is going to be way better at building that widget, and
Learning
it's going
curve.
to be
Yeah.
less expensive than the guy who does one widget. And so they can charge a lot less for it than the one widget guy. And so what we try to find is saying, like, look, what is the orthopedic surgeon in LA or Austin or wherever who does, 5 or 6 knee surgeries a day, as opposed to does 5 or 6 knee surgeries a month? And who's going to be better at it? Who's going to be less expensive? The guy who does 5 or 6 a day is going to be better at it, going to be less expensive. You're going to have way less complications. And they've got this thing like churning, right?
Second
They're
nature. Yeah.
specialized in that. And so that's who we're trying to get people to. And they're really, really good, And so, yet we think that the guy who's going to be the most expensive is going to be the best. It's not like, we always think, like, if I go to the Four Seasons and it's $1,000 a night, as opposed to the Comfort Inn, which is $100 a night, clearly the Four Seasons is the best. But in healthcare, that's not the way it is. Like, we want the guy who builds 100 widgets a day, as opposed to the one who makes one and therefore has to charge a hell of a lot for it. So that's what we're doing on the healthcare side, and our members are like, You can go to any of the review sites. Like, they love the doctors that they get, and they love this service. So it really kind of puts the power back in the hands of the member or the patient.
Amazing. And then when you talk about putting the money back into the hands of the participants, whether it's the recipient or the person providing the money, again, Bitcoin is the people's money.
Yeah,
It gets the intermediary out of the equation, and so that you don't have to pay that monopolistic 2-3% from Visa, Mastercard, American
I hate
Express,
that.
whatever have you. And so you mentioned that you would need the government's help to get that movement going. Now, when I think about this, I think about, okay, everyone's not a Bitcoiner. Every doctor's office isn't a Bitcoiner. So how do you get the government's help, and what are you getting the government's help doing? Are they
Sure.
orange pilling? Are they providing avenues so that they can easily convert the money over to fiat like Strike? What goes into that vision that you have of, we would really like the government's help to get these doctors' offices to
Yeah.
accept
Um,
Bitcoin?
it's a great question. Let me tell you kind of how we currently operate, and then what our vision is for
Yes,
how
sir.
this operates.
Mhm.
The way that we currently operate is that when you sign up with CrowdHealth, you actually set up a bank account at the same time. So every month, I will deposit money into my bank account that I can then use to help somebody else out in the community. So let's just say you broke your arm and it's $5,000. We'll go out and ask 50 people to help you with your broken arm. So I ask the first person, and they say yes. They submit $100, or they deposit $100 into the CrowdHealth bank account that they just started. That $500 goes from their bank account to your bank account, or excuse me, $100. I think I said $100 goes
Yep.
from their bank account to your bank account. And I asked 50 people, and if they all say yes, then you have $5,000 in your bank account that you can then go and pay that doctor directly for that broken arm. If somebody says no, then we move on to the next person. So we'll
Okay.
just keep going until we get that $5,000 for you. And so that's the way it currently works. And of course, there's transaction fees with that. And as you said, a lot of grifters, a lot of rent seekers in our fiat monetary system. We've actually set up a system so that when our Bitcoiners sign up, you can start a new wallet, a Lightning wallet, so that you can submit fiat, converts it to Bitcoin. That Bitcoin then is transferred to you, so that you now have $5,000 of Bitcoin in your account that you can then directly pay your doctor in Bitcoin, or we have a way for them to convert it back to fiat. I mean, we'd like a Bitcoin circularity, so that you submit Bitcoin to you for your broken arm, that they submit Bitcoin to the doctor, and so the entire system is Bitcoin. We've actually set up the wallet. It's an autonomous or asynchronous Lightning wallet. It's really, really cool. The technology is super cool. The problem that we have is that when I give you money for your broken arm, there's tax consequences of that.
Yeah.
So given it is a gift, if I give you $100 worth of Bitcoin, you own my tax basis on that Bitcoin. So let's just say I bought that Bitcoin at 10,000, and here we are at what, 92 or 93 or whatever it is today. You now own 83,000 or 80, let's just say 80% of that is taxable to you. Right? That just doesn't work. Because if I
Right.
give you $100 and you now have to pay taxes on 80 of it, it just doesn't. The transaction costs of that are just way too high. The administrative costs of that are way too high. And so when I mentioned the government interaction, I think Senator Lummis has a bill out there that's being kind of negotiated, that any transaction fee under, I think it was $600, is not taxable, or any Bitcoin transaction is under 600 is not taxable. Which is, if we can do that, then if I give you $100 worth of Bitcoin, there's no tax implications of that. So that works. And then going all the way around to the doc, what we've gone and done is we've went and recruited docs who will accept Bitcoin. We've either orange pilled them and say, hey, we'll send you people if you'll accept Bitcoin,
Right.
or we've just found docs who already accept Bitcoin. And we've got now hundreds of docs who've reached out to us and be like, hey, we'll accept Bitcoin.
Wow.
I want to go to those docs because I know that they have the same worldview as I do, right?
That's
So we're
right.
building this database of Bitcoin docs so that if people want to go to a pay in Bitcoin, want to go to a Bitcoin doc, we can get them to a Bitcoin doc. So that's ultimately what we'd like, is that full Bitcoin circularity with no fiat in the middle, no transitioning to fiat at all. That's our ultimate vision. And I think, we're close. I need one little law change, and then we had a person full time going out and just finding orange pilling docs, which
Wow.
would be a super cool thing. From my perspective, healthcare in our country just hit 5 trillion. Actually it's just under, like 4.9 trillion is the last that we saw. If we can use Bitcoin within the largest industry in our country, in a circular way, like I think that goes to a long way to get Bitcoin as being a great transaction, method of transaction, and I think that increases the price, and that does all kinds of, it gets us away from our fiat printer, money printer. And so that's my ultimate vision, is that we can have a total circular Bitcoin thing, and we've got the infrastructure to do it. We need a law change, and once we get that, I'm going to have somebody out there full time just orange pill and docs, which I think would be my ultimate goal.
It's amazing how, if we just go back to the incentives of, or if we just go back to the basics of economics, the principles of economics, what we find is that simple money and simple transactions, people want that. People want simple exchange. People want simple money. And Bitcoin's not as complicated as it's purported in the media. It's not as complicated as it's purported as this day trading mechanism. It really is money simplified, and the powers that be don't really want that. The visas are looking for ways to monetize this thing that's essentially kicking them out of business. The government's trying to figure out ways to capture the value that essentially is demonetizing their ability to print it forever, to tax forever, to tax things that they shouldn't be taxing. It's really remarkable to see you building up this infrastructure, this way to communicate value, despite the forces that are right there, keeping you bound everywhere. But you're still, like, you're just nitpicking, you're picking at it, you're picking away.
Yeah.
And most people don't have the patience for that. Most people say, I just want my money now. And that's the reason. I just want my money now. I just want my good now. And that's kind of the reason why we're stuck in this monopolistic money environment. But it's patience from people like you that are essentially making the world a better place. So I'm learning a lot here. I want to change paradigms. I want to shift to, again, your healthcare, but you're involved in insurance. I kind of want to get your opinion on some of the other things that have happened in the world in regards to insurance. And two things. I've alluded to one just now. When it came down to the United Healthcare CEO, who was assassinated by this guy, and we don't know if he's like this Manchurian candidate. He's like this weird pariah of a individual, and it's causing this thing that was buzzing on the internet for at least a couple weeks. It's kind of died down now. What are your opinions about what transpired there? And is this a product of the insurance industry? Is this a product of just Antifa like things where we just want to tear down America and tear down capitalism? What is your opinion about what transpired?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's awful. I think it's awful. I mean, it's, especially as somebody who's a CEO of a company that is not insurance, but we're fighting to get people's bills paid. It's an awful thing to see, and it is not the way. I don't think any. Look, I kind of associate. I'm here at the Bitcoin Commons in Austin. I associate with a lot of Bitcoiners. I think all of us want to see something work that's peaceful. I don't think anybody. I think Bitcoiners generally are the most peaceful people that I've actually encountered. Like, they hate war. They don't want this. even though a lot of us are gun owners, including myself.
We
But
love to defend our rights. That's for
yeah,
sure.
we want to defend our rights for sure. And this was awful. I think it's a couple things. One, I think there's a pent up frustration with the current system, health insurance system, that it goes back to incentives that are incentivized to decline our bills. You know, as I told you before, like they want to see prices generally go up because they make more money. But in the year, as I mentioned, they can only make 15% of profits on your premium. And so if the medical bills start expanding to 86% or 87%, which means their profits go down from 15% to 14% to 13%, they manage around that 15%. So if their medical bills start creeping above that, they actually have like a dial that they say, hey, make it harder or make it easier for people to get their healthcare bills. And they do this a lot through pre-authorizations. So what they do is as I mentioned before, doctors spend a lot of time with health insurance plans to get paid. One of them is pre-authorization. So any big events, they actually have to go to the insurance plan beforehand to get pre-approved. And this takes a ton of time. And so they basically make that pre-approval really hard or really easy, depending upon how they're financially doing this quarter, right? And that's where the games get played, and that's where people get hurt. If you dial it up to make it a lot harder, they can say, oh, I didn't decline it. You just got to prove to me that this is medically necessary. But they make it really, really difficult. And I think what the guy Luigi or whatever his name is, he basically in his manifesto said, the insurance companies made it nearly impossible for me and my mom. I don't know all the details to get the medical care that we need. And so when you start restricting medical care, just because of this little dial to make it harder or easier, I think it's a horrendous way of just operating. I mean, because you have people who are truly suffering that need help, that you're dialing up the difficulty of them getting help because of a profit motive. And I think that's what ultimately led to this, just a long escalation of frustrations with health insurance and how all the incentive systems that are in that system to deny care. So I think people are at a tipping point, and honestly, like I got declined too, right? And so instead of using a gun, which I think is the wrong way, right, I'm using, free markets, right? Let's use free markets to correct this as opposed to a gun to correct this. And so that's the way that I've chosen to go about this, which I think is more the right way. Let's go and create something that is an alternative as opposed to, bitching and moaning about it. Yeah, I mean, and look, anybody who's watching this now knows there's an alternative. There's an alternative to health insurance. It works. And if you don't want to join it, like, that's fine. But know that you're now going into a system where the incentives are against you and they're not for you. When people have a big healthcare bill, what do they say? Oh, I got to go fight with my health insurance plan to get this thing paid, right? On the other hand, we fight for you to go get it paid, right? We're on your team as opposed to being your enemy. And that's where I think, healthcare has got to go. I mean, we got to have more companies like ours who are trying to go out there and trying to help people find great care as opposed to fighting people from getting great care.
It's amazing that again, you're a profit-oriented business. You are looking to make money, but you're on the side of other people that are looking to get good value. It's amazing that what profit is turned into in the fiat realm is essentially, can I take as much from someone else as possible before they want to kill me?
Yeah.
And that's
by the
essentially,
way,
go ahead.
Yeah. Let me just say, I think it's super important. The way we make money is basically a subscription fee.
Yeah.
So you pay us a monthly fee. And if your bills go up, like you need more care, like we have no incentive to deny a bill, right? That actually hurts us, right? Because you are then going to go on social media and be like, these CrowdHealth people, they're not getting no, we actually have all the incentive in the world to help you get these bills paid. Because Yeah, and by the way, if you get your bills paid and you go and say something great about us, then we get more people on the platform. We make more money, so we actually are incentivized to take really good care of you, and not to get too sappy here, but like when I asked my team internally 3 or 4 months ago, I said, hey, what makes us better than the alternatives? And you know what they said is like, we legitimately care for our customers. Right. And because we can do that, because our incentives are aligned with our customers, because so we can care for them and make them feel like they're a valuable part of the community, as opposed to making money by declining bills and making them, pissed at us. So the incentive systems are totally different between the way that we operate and the way that the insurance plans operate.
Yeah, you're not holding your breath saying like, we care about people. Oh, but I'm dying while I'm caring about people. No, it's like we care about people because it's good. It's natively first principles good. And on top of that, it's also saying the more we show and the more we actually do care about people, the more we benefit monetarily, because that word is going to get around, and your good actions essentially put money in your pocket, versus the other one where the insurance companies, if we could just get the government to force people to use us, we can monopolize everything about them, and they're essentially prisoners of our incentives, which is to make money despite them. It's completely shifting the way we exchange value on its head, and it shows how far we've gone away from just Crusoean economics, where it's like, I make something, do you want it? Yes, and we both benefit from the exchange. And that leads me to this other question. Of course, I'm from Los Angeles. At the time of this recording, most of the woodlands in Los Angeles is burning down. And we're talking about the Palisades fire. We're talking about the Eaton fire, which is in Pasadena. And months before this all happened, first of all, years before this happened, Trump was tweeting about Gavin Newsom, how the incentives of keeping water in the area were not being met, and you guys are going to pay one day. Of course, they laugh at Trump. They always laugh at Trump years ago. They laughed at him with Nord Stream, and then he ends up being right. They laugh at him about the fires in California. He ends up being right again. But even still, fast forward to, let's just say 6 months in the summer of 24, I heard a lot of homes were just released from their fire insurance out of nowhere. And we could talk about conspiracies. We could talk about the relationship between this and Maui. Just now today, there's news that Governor Newsom has been having some deals to change the zoning in Palisades to essentially apartment complex zones, where most of them were single family homes. We'll see if that actually is true or not. But what has happened is that insurance companies left these homes high and dry, and essentially and they were essentially victims of a fire catastrophe just waiting to happen. So long-winded preface is saying, are companies incentivized to just kind of leave you to fend for yourself, because the situation that's coming about is essentially not profitable for them? Is it not profitable for them because their incentives to exist are also out of alignment? Why are they leaving these people, and now they're paying the ultimate price?
Yeah, I mean, from my understanding of this situation and understanding of just insurance markets generally, oftentimes the state regulators have to approve the rates that insurance companies can charge for their services, and this is everything from health insurance to property insurance to all kinds of stuff. And so, for health insurance, they actually, the health insurance companies go to them and they say, hey, here are the rates we can charge. And then the state regulators say yes or no, or you have to lower it or whatever. And then the health insurance plans have a decision. They can say, okay, we're going to stay in California, or we're going to get out of California, or whatever state it is. I think for the property insurance, fire insurance, the one that we're talking about, I think the same thing happens where, these companies went to the state regulators and they said, hey, these people are super risky because of fire, because of, the rain that happened there, was that last year or the year before? I
Yeah,
can't remember.
yeah, I think
The flood.
2023, we had record amount of rain, and so
Yeah, floods,
yeah,
fire, all these kinds of things. And so they looked at this and they said, they had a lot of smart math geeks who
of
are looking
course.
at it and saying, actuarially, we've got to get more money from these people to cover our risk. And so these companies went to the state regulators. They said, hey, we need a lot more to cover this. The state regulator said, no, we're not going to allow you to charge what you need based upon your, risk assessment. And so these companies decided, like, okay, well, if we can't get enough to cover our risk, then we just aren't going to provide the service. And so they decided to pull out of, a big chunk of homes in all over California. It wasn't just LA, it was all
Right.
over the place.
Yeah.
And so, these people were left high and dry because they didn't have an alternative for health insurance, or excuse me, for property fire insurance. And so I think it's, look, I think, again, it's a perfect example of governments getting in the way of free markets to keep people from being able to buy goods. Anytime, we know this is economics basic, 101. Like when the government goes in and sets prices, there is going to be scarcity. Like that's just a foundational to economics. If I can't make enough money on my goods, I'm not going to sell you the good. I'm not going to lose money on a good. And so I think that's what happened in this case. Look, more information may come out. That's the best information I have to date. And that's just a function of this, over regulated, industries, all in the name of, why do they do this? They say for consumer protection, they want to protect the consumer, but actually what they did in this case is they put tons of these consumers, these homeowners at risk. And now a lot of them are, out hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. I mean, Palisades is one of the nicest
All those houses
codes.
are 4 million plus.
Yeah, they're out millions and millions of dollars. So it's a shame, government overreach from my perspective, and I will be the first to say I'm wrong if something else comes out that the big insurance carriers did something sketchy, which they may have. They've been known to do these things, but to the best of my knowledge, given the date that the information that we have here on January 10th, that's the best I could surmise.
I appreciate that. And I'm sure more information will come out. Again, it seems like every day there's more news, and even to this date, it seems like even the Pasadena fire for the first 5 days were 0% contained. They're now reporting 6% contained. So at least there's good news.
That's great.
I'm sorry, the Palisades fire. So at least there's an opportunity for some more homes to be saved before more damage is done. So
yeah, man,
I'm
thoughts
happy.
and prayers go out to those people. I mean, my
Absolutely.
aunt, my dad's sister lost her home in Pasadena, that she's been living there since 1981. And it's not even just the economic thing. It's like, man, I can't imagine losing your house after being there for
Subjective value.
40 some odd years, and the memories
Pictures.
of that and the pictures
Property,
and
yeah.
oh man, it's just a horrific thing. So thoughts and prayers out to y'all in California, because what you're all going through is just horrific.
Yeah. No, I have a buddy of mine who was impacted by the Palisades fire, and he's a Bitcoiner, and I just hope that he's doing well. And I'm pretty sure I may know some people in the valley as well, and I've checked on them. Generally they're going to make it, but yeah, there's some risk to those people living in those areas, and it's just unfortunate. I hope some good over time comes from it. With the time I have left with you, I do want to ask, you've developed this archetype, or this what does he call it? This plan of engaging in voluntarism, in a successful and approvable way, despite all the cronyism, despite all the socialism that we have in America, in the West, that's creeping. They're learning from China and say, we can do socialism, we can do communism better. It's really scary. Modern monetary theory, et cetera, et cetera. How do you see the formula that you've created manifesting in other industries? Is it education? Is it other types of things that I can't think of? Do you think about this formula that you've created and how it can manifest elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, I have thought about it. I think probably, I've thought about it more tangentially from like, what we currently do. It's like, can we do dental and can we do veterinary and can we
Mhm.
do car and can we do home and can we
Right.
do some of these other things? I mean, I think I've thought it more about it like that. But look, I mean, I think that, if you don't mind, I'll go to a couple biblical principles here that I think are foundational to
Absolutely.
me.
This is a
You
Christian
know,
podcast.
biblically we're called to love God first and love our neighbor second. And I think what we've gotten away from in our society is truly like loving our neighbor. And I think that the reasons why, and this is all my measly brain kind of thinking about this, but like I remember growing up and somebody moved in next door. We would bake them cookies and we'd bring them cookies and being like, welcome to the neighborhood, and that you really try to bring like that neighborly affection towards one another because you're gonna have to live next to one another. I think nowadays what we do is we look at our neighbor when they move in. They're like, how much did they buy their house for? Because it's the best indicator of what my house is worth.
Mm.
And so why is that, right? I think one is another biblical principle is the love of money is the root of all evil, right? And so there's just evil that creeps throughout our nation and throughout the world. But two is I think that like what has happened is that we've had the government come in, the insurance companies come in, and if our neighbor needs help, then the government has said, hey, I'll take it. Or the insurance company said, I'll take it. Right. Like they're the ones that step in between us and our neighbor, as opposed to like us being responsible to love our neighbor. Right. Like you see somebody on the side of the street and I'll, seek repentance for this, I'm sure one day. But like one of the things I immediately comes to mind is like, why aren't you getting food stamps or why aren't you
Right.
getting, like housing, shelter? Like the government does a lot of that. But in reality, what should be going through my mind is how can you're a member of my community, right? Like how do I love you better as a member of my community? Yet we have gotten conditioned to think that somebody else is going to take care of it.
Mhm.
Whereas I think we need to reorient ourselves and take out insurance, take out government and say, no, no, no. We as a community are responsible for one another. And if you think that's socialism or you think that you're communism, you have a kindergartner's understanding of economics because that's community, right? And that's different. And I think that's really, really important. So I think the Bitcoiners do this just so well, where you have a community of people who are willing to come around you and help you and love you through really hard things in life, as opposed to, outsourcing that to the government and insurance companies. And of course, when you outsource your requirement to love your neighbor, it gets bastardized, right? And we're seeing that. And so that's where I think is like, man, I really want to build communities here where people do care for each other. And like, within CrowdHealth, we have a Bitcoin community. So we've got something like 2,000 people who are in our Bitcoin community and they fund each other's healthcare expenses. And we're trying to build up that community because Bitcoiners have such a strong bond with one another and the same worldview and things like that. And we've actually had people we had a guy in Dallas, the one that comes to mind, who had colon cancer. And he comes and he's like, hey, man, I feel awful that I have colon cancer because I don't want to, burden the community. And you're
Mm.
like, dude, you would never say that with United Healthcare. But now that you're a part of a community and you're funding each other's healthcare expenses, you actually like care about other people in your community. And I think the question mark for me is like, is that scalable? And I think it is. I mean, other people can be cynics out there and think it's not, but I think that if you can get a community of people together who share some bond, and that can be a faith-based community, it can be a Bitcoin community. We've got a carnivore community for people who like all these people. Like if you have a part of a community that have a bond, you don't want to screw other people in community. I think that's just a fundamental human thing. I don't want to screw people in my community. And man, it's working. It works. So I think anytime we can like build up community as being that safety net, as opposed to the government or an insurance company being that safety net, I think we're just gonna be better off as human beings. So sorry for that kind of philosophical, overview, but I truly believe like that's one of the broken pieces in our nation is we have become so me versus you as opposed to us as a community thriving. It's toxic.
I think that first of all, you can't apologize to that because that's what we live for, especially when we're podcasters. We all think we're philosophers, but I think that philosophy is right on point. I think love is scalable, and I know that because there's the infinite love of our Creator bestowed upon us, and we don't deserve it. It's merciful, graceful love, and because of that, we take that love that he has and we try to mimic it the best we can, at least some of us, especially those who understand who God is and who Christ is. And then you take the Bitcoin community where they're understanding what money is and how value can be exchanged in a mutually beneficial way. And when you understand how valuable that is, you will scale that no matter what, because it's way better than the legacy system that you have. And that's why I do think, just from a philosophical, from a go get it mentality, Bitcoin will scale because it has to find a way,
Yeah,
because
I agree.
our alternative is despotism, theft, selfishness, and death. Andy, I thank you for coming on my show. I respect your time. I respect the knowledge that you have. I definitely learned a lot. I'm sure my audience has. And I look forward to speaking with you again in the future. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yes, sir. So that was Andy Schoonover with CrowdHealth. What can I say? I pass off insurance knowledge and functionality to other people, but understanding how to care for yourself is a part of self-sovereignty that Bitcoin brings to your worldview. And the next step is, how can that self-sovereignty, how can that individual sovereignty be applied to other parts of your life? If Bitcoin isn't changing you, then you're just a part of the fiat machine. I'm Sir Ulric, like my father before me. Tune in next time when I bring on another brilliant advocate for liberty.